Eduardo? Good evening to MILLBRAE City, to the public. Welcome back. We are returning from a closed session and reopening to the general session and beginning the regular meeting of the MILLBRAE City Council for March 14th, 2023. And if we could please do roll call.
Councilmember Pappen,
Here.
Councilmember Cahalan,
Here.
Councilmember Fung,
Here.
Vice Mayor Goodman,
Here.
Mayor Schneider.
Here.
All members of the City Council are present.
Thank you. And if everyone could please join me in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And before we get going, I know that a good number of MILLBRAE residents have no power right now. I thank Councilwoman Pappen for moving this along up in Sacramento. We had 4,000 households down and we're down to 2,800 households without power. But we hope that everybody will be getting their power as quickly as we can. And thank you for everyone's patience. With that, we're going to start the night with the ceremonial presentations. And Councilwoman Angelina Cahalan is going to do the proclamation declaring March 15th, 2023 as Equal Pay Day. Councilwoman.
Thank you. Whereas Equal Pay Day was first observed in 1996 by the National Committee on Pay Equity to bring visibility regarding gender wage disparities, and whereas the fight for equal pay prevails as many push for pay equity between men and women in the workplace, the wage gap remains prevalent throughout the world in countless industries and occupations. And whereas, according to San Mateo County, women earn about 81 cents on the dollar compared to men. These wage gaps are made even more evident for mothers and women of color. And whereas, despite levels of education, research shows women still earn less than men over the course of a lifetime. And whereas lower pay means women have fewer opportunities to access substantial capital to build a solid foundation for their future and generations to come. And whereas fair pay strengthens the security of families and eases the burden of the cost of everyday living while boosting the American economy. And whereas, although women have made considerable progress towards equal pay, we still need to continue advocating for equitable pay and put it into execution. And whereas we encourage everyone to acknowledge gender wage disparities and contribute toward the efforts of achieving equality for women in the workforce. Now, therefore, we, the members of the MILLBRAE City Council, do hereby proclaim March 15th, 2023 as Equal Pay Day.
Would you like me to say something? Or? Yeah.
And after.
Yeah, my name's Gaetan Andrews, and I lived in. Am I standing?
Do we have
correctly?
the mic on?
I always do that wrong. Okay, thank you. Yes, my name is Gaetan Andrews, and I lived in MILLBRAE, raised my family here for 54 years. So we moved to MILLBRAE because it was a small community, family-oriented, and most of all, MILLBRAE had good schools, and that's why we moved here. So as for tonight, I want to thank Mayor Schneider to invite me and the MILLBRAE City Council to come in and accept this wonderful proclamation. It's an honor. Thank you very much. And you said everything. You wrote, about Equal Pay Day. So I'm a member of AAUW, American Association of University Women. And what they say here is we cannot build back an economy that works for everyone without ensuring that all women can work with equality, safety, and dignity, starting with pay equity. It's probably not going to happen right away. It's going to take more years too, but eventually it'll get there, and women can receive the same pay as men do, over the years. Thank you very much.
Next up is Councilwoman Gina Pappin reading the proclamation proclaiming March 25th, 2023 as Greek Independence Day. And we have the owners of Dean's Produce. If you want to join us, it's how the councilman wants to do this. If you want to join us at the podium to celebrate this event.
The whole family up here. Come on. Are we good? Can you hear me? Okay. Well, first, on behalf of my grandparents, Pappin used to be Papandreopoulos. The City of MILLBRAE proclamation, Greek Independence Day, is celebrated annually on March 25th to commemorate the start of the Greek Revolution of 1821. On March 25th, 1821, the people of Greece declared their independence and liberty from the Ottoman Empire, which had occupied Greece for nearly 400 years. And on that date, Bishop Eurakamos of Patras hoisted the Greek flag at the monastery of Aia Varos, inciting the Peloponnese to rise against their oppressors. And after many years of war, with reinforcements from Great Britain, France, and Russia, the people of Greece won their independence from the Ottoman Empire on September 14th, 1829. Greece, the birthplace of democracy, at liberty again. And the cry of freedom or death became the motto of the revolution and became forever immortalized on the Greek flag. And Greek Independence Day embodies the symbol of victory and survival for all those who are oppressed. In recognition of overcoming their oppressors, this day honors their victories by hosting parades, military demonstrations, and speeches. Across Greece, there are school-organized parades in which children march with the Greek flag while dressed in traditional costumes. And whereas the city of MILLBRAE acknowledges Greek Independence Day and honors the heritage of more than 3 million Americans of Greek descent, now, therefore, we, the members of the MILLBRAE Council, do hereby proclaim March 25th, 2013 as Greek Independence Day. And I'm so happy that the Soldatos family is here and has had their business here for what, almost 20 years, please?
30 years. 20 years. Yes, hello. Thank you, City of MILLBRAE. We love MILLBRAE. And more importantly, I'm first generation and my husband's from Greece, living the American dream. So thank you, City of MILLBRAE. Absolutely. Come on. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And I just want to say one more thing. This is why when Martin Luther King was crossing the bridge, the Greek archbishop stood next to him because he came from this war and came here. So any injustice, he was side by side with Martin Luther King and got death threats and everything else. But liberty and freedom has always been the motto. The death part, well, hopefully we've gone beyond that, but it means the world to us. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And lovely to have Dean's Produce because they're a beloved part of MILLBRAE. So thank you for always working with us too. Thank you. And now we have Executive Director Sean Charpentier from the City and County Association of Government, and he's going to talk to us about Focus Equity Area Priority Equity Communities. Please, do we have everything set up?
Ready?
Yes, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sean Charpentier. I'm the Executive Director at CCAG. Thank you for having me here. Also with me tonight is Kaki Chung, our Program Director. She probably knows more about this than I do, so she's here to keep me, make sure I'm accurate on these items. I appreciate sharing the agenda with equal pay, and I see micromobility coming up, all things that we're very supportive of. I wanted to talk a little bit about the CCAG equity focus areas. Next slide, please. Why equity? CCAG is the congestion management agency and the county transportation agency. Equity is a dominant theme now in transportation. The state is looking at it very seriously and incorporating it into all their documents. Just to give an example of that is the California State Transportation Agency, CalSTA, which is really Caltrans, has the equity goal of advancing social equity by actively directing support, resources, and protections to disadvantaged communities and ensuring that the highest quality transportation options are available to those who need them the most. And CCAG is part of this process. MTC has approved an equity pledge. And fundamentally, we believe that equity is important both so we can be competitive with these funding streams, but we also have sort of a moral imperative to improve the mobility outcomes of our disadvantaged households in this county. Next slide, please. A little bit of background. Our equity focus areas were developed for the 2021 CCAG Comprehensive Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. It was adopted by the CCAG board in June of 2021. What we included in it as part of that was equity focus areas that are suitable within the San Mateo County context. They're a little bit different than the ones that the Metropolitan Transportation Commission uses. And then also that this would provide some consistency for deciding where those equity areas are for CCAG funding and programs. Next slide, please. The methodology was based on census data, and it was the share of the population that is a non-white population, median household income, housing and transportation cost as a percentage of annual median household income, and share of households that do not own cars. And we organized it into composite scores for each census block group, and then took the top 25 percentile and identified those as equity focus areas. One thing that was really important to us is also that we thought it was important to try to get a measure of not just the ones who are clearly low income, but also those who are on the edge, or neighborhoods that might be on the edge where people are struggling, the working poor, where people are really struggling and one paycheck away from maybe being homeless or something of that nature. So we included a metric for how much they pay in housing and transportation as a percentage of their annual income, is that is a key indicator of sort of economic volatility and economic stress in that household. We identified, next slide, please. Just to give a little bit of background, as a county, San Mateo County is a very prosperous county, but we also do have a range of both cities and areas within cities that reflect the full range of prosperity or income. So in East Palo Alto, the median household income is about $83,000. Woodside is about $250,000. The county median is about $136,000, and we added MILLBRAE to this. It's kind of right in the middle there around the county median, just as these are citywide, these are entire jurisdiction wide. There are census tracts within each city that is different, that could be different. Next, please. Our county-wide bicycle and pedestrian plan had an extensive public outreach engagement. We also updated the maps that form the backbone of our pedestrian and bicycle planning in the county. So we had over 19 public meetings, including meetings with our CCAG's Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, the Technical Advisory Committee, the CMEC Committee, and the CCAG board. And at all of those meetings, both the plan itself and the equity focus areas in their development and their recommendation were presented and discussed. Next slide, please. Here is a map of the ones that we use. The purple are the equity focus areas. There are a lot of areas that are fairly well known as some of the lower income or working class communities. We see a lot of equity focus areas in East Palo Alto, Bellhaven, Daly City, some pockets in Redwood City, North Fair Oaks, and pockets in South San Francisco and San Bruno. So there weren't a huge number of surprises in what came out, but we also did a separate one for the coast, and we did identify quite a few on the coast side that reflect some of the pockets of perhaps lower income households on the coast. Next slide, please. We do have an interactive map, and the link is here. I wish I'd brought my pointer. If you look at the bottom right, you can see there's a little bit of a scale that says 8 to 10, where it's pink. And you can scale it up or down. With the higher it goes, the higher level of occurrence of those demographic characteristics. So we typically target anything with a score of 8 or above. So those are the areas that have the highest concentration of low-income households, community households of color, zero-car households, and also households where there's a high housing and transportation burden. But you can scale it down if you want, but we typically focus on 8 to 10. And the link to it is included in the presentation, and it's available on our website as well. Next slide, please. Wanted to reflect what's in MILLBRAE. There were a couple of equity focus areas identified. The long rectangular one is along El Camino, sort of near the transit station, and then extending north. And then the one to the left, I actually don't know where that neighborhood is, or I don't know the name of that neighborhood, sorry. Lomita Hills. So these were...
The neighborhood is just north by northwest of Cappuccino High School, and it's, I believe, Lomita Hills.
So these were two areas that were identified through the equity focus area mapping effort in MILLBRAE. Next slide, please. These are just close-ups of those areas, a little more granular geography. Next slide, please. So then importantly, what do we do with this information? How does this help to improve the lives and the mobility outcomes for families and households that are struggling in these areas? We've been using them to provide extra points for our competitive funding applications. So primarily it's been TDA Article 3, mostly it's all bicycle and pedestrian funding, and OBAG 3. We just completed a major round of OBAG 3 funding, and we completed a round of TDA Article 3 funding in around this time last year, I believe. Is that right? May 2022?
Well, OBAG went to September, October, because it had to go up to MTC.
That was
Yeah.
OBAG. TDA was in May.
TDA, yeah, around this time last year.
So when cities apply for these funds in the scoring process, they will get extra points if they are in an equity focus area. And it is that way that we try to identify that those are priority areas. Those are areas that typically may have systematic, historic underinvestment, and an attempt to try to correct that. And in the OBAG 3 cycle that we just completed, about 40% of the applications that were funded were in either an equity focus area or an MTC, equity priority community. We also use it in our ongoing effort right now. We're doing an equity assessment of CCAG in its totality of its programs and activities and investments to try to see if there are ways we can better integrate equity into what we do. So we use the equity focus areas as part of that as a starting point. Next slide, please. There are other mapping efforts in the county related to equity. The one on the left, Samtrans went through and did an equity priority area. It's quite similar to ours. And then probably the big difference with Samtrans was they didn't include the housing and transportation burden. Then the one on the right is the MTC Equity Priority Communities, and that's been a mapping effort that's been around for some time. And it does cover a lot of the same areas. But ours is a little different from MTC in that our income levels are higher. The MTC one is pegged at, prioritizes 200% of the federal poverty level, which for an individual is about 27,000. So ours goes a little bit higher to higher incomes, just to account for trying to capture more of the struggling working poor population. Next slide, please. Oh, and that concludes my presentation. I'm available if there are any questions. We appreciate the opportunity to come in and present this to MILLBRAE.
Very glad that we got you here and hope you're feeling better. I have a bunch of questions because this is something we've been dealing with at CCAG's Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee. So I'm really glad to see this, and to my knowledge, this is new for MILLBRAE. So for us learning how we might use the fact that along our El Camino Real, our entire length on both sides falls into this. There's a couple of areas in there that are interesting why they're not. There are some of our higher apartment areas that people are on. They're older apartment buildings. So if we wanted to, how is it, let me go backwards. Was this done by census tract, or how is it done? Because then how did we lose some of the areas that I think could also be in the CCAG map, let alone the MTC or the Samtrans maps?
So we wanted granular data, so we went down to census block groups,
Census block.
which is a much smaller unit than a census tract. So that might explain why it seems like there are some areas, it happens with census tracts as well, but there's some areas where it's right across the street. There's a difference. So.
I'm happy to see this because I've been advocating more from the environmental perspective, that I believe that MILLBRAE is more environmentally burdened than many other communities by, we're only 2 miles from this way to that way. We've got 2 freeways in El Camino, 3 trains, and the airport. So it never made sense to me that we weren't a focus area for something, at least for noise and air pollution mitigation. So I'm very happy to see this. And I am hopeful, and then I'll let the other council members speak, that when we get the new Social Equity Commission going, they can be diving into these various maps and how we can better advocate. Because MILLBRAE has, I love staff when we get grants. I love them when they don't, but generally we have not been on the winning side of grants. And now we have some additional ways of getting some points, but we have to learn how to make our projects around those points. At CCAG BPAC, we have tried to tighten up that you don't just get to have one of these in your city and claim it on your application. Your project actually has to be inside that location. So that's something we've tightened up at CCAG BPAC. And then my last question, you talked about CCAG is now doing an equity focus. You know, we've talked at BPAC about geographic equity, where the dispersion of funds throughout the county are going. Will the geographic equity be looked at?
Not as part of the equity study itself. The equity study is about where are the low income households? Not does this city get more or this region get more. We do try to employ geographic equity and took action as the last CCAG board member to reflect that, coming back with some funding on the coast side to reflect that they didn't get anything during OBAG 3. But I know that is a longstanding topic. Geographic distribution. I prefer to think of it as geographic distribution because the equity is it equity by city? Is it equity by population? But trying to accomplish a geographic distribution with North County, Central County, South County, coast side being reflected in funding opportunities.
So the reason I'm bringing that up to the people of MILLBRAE, I've been on CCAG BPAC for 7 years now. This is going into my 8th year, and I'm currently chairing it. And when you look at the distribution of the TDA funds plus the OBAG funds from a straight grant award, South San Francisco is close to $20 million, MILLBRAE's at $274,000. So you can see that for whatever reason, And there are many, many reasons for that. There is some inequity within that. And we've even talked within BPAC that bigger cities have more staff, smaller cities have smaller staff, they're spread thinner, the ability to write a more competitive grant is something we've talked, that was part of the OBAG, the last process, that the BPAC members on that didn't score based on how well-written a grant was, but I know for a fact somebody from the CMAC graded it on how well-written the grant was, not whether it was the best project, but how well-written the grant was. So we have some work to do in terms of this, but again, very happy to see this tonight on that. And again, I'm looking forward to MILLBRAE creating the Social Equity Commission because I can't keep fighting this battle by myself on that. Any questions from council members? Councilwoman Pappen.
Thank you for being here. So a couple quick questions here. One is we have discussed recently trying to be more equitable, as the mayor has pointed out, with certain cities always getting something, maybe adding a point or two for other cities just to try to balance that out. Does that look like it's going to happen?
Well, we don't have anything in process right now because it does vary a lot on which cities apply and what they apply for. So it really depends on the cities themselves.
So I think we've discussed previously, and we should really look at, because I know the entire CAG board has felt that some sort of equity element should be just in the distribution of funds, because as we talk on all, regionally speaking, San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, there tends to be a heavy weight of funds at MTC that go in those directions. So if we can do something here. Now, too, I don't believe the environmental aspect is included in any of these evaluations. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's not intended to be an environmental hazard map, in part because every city, not all, every city, but most cities have some environmental hazards they're dealing with, whether it's flooding or fires or noise or traffic. And in part because the ability to respond to that is dramatically heightened or reduced depending on income. So even with those pressures, the low income areas are the ones that are the most vulnerable.
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify that. I know the mayor's very passionate on those issues, but throughout the region, it's not one of the elements that's calculated in when these fundings are distributed. So I just wanted to be clear on that. It's more related as to what was presented.
I would only add where that comes in is in California, Cal Screen, and then the US EPA has another screen. The problem with the metrics that they use is that they don't look at what what CCAG has done, which I'm really happy, is your family income and the percentage that goes to pay for housing, which then shifts many, many communities here in the Bay Area into communities, cities, increasing their chance of getting statewide funding. But I'd also point out that the funds for TDA, the funds for OBAG are usually coming from multiple funding streams. All of them are paid for by every resident in this area. So none of them are just, there's some other formulas that are distributed per capita. So for example, MILLBRAE gets less road repair dollars than Hillsborough because they have more linear miles of road than we do, even though our roads are more used. So a lot of these funding mechanisms really have some severe problems with them, and we need, as a greater community, to be diving into these programs. So not to put you on the spot, because again, I'm really happy to finally see us on the map, but yes, I am going to be equity across all of its many forms. Other questions? And I am advocating at the state level and with the help of our ABAG representative on the ABAG board, Carlos Romero, to get the cost of housing as a percentage on Cal-Enviro-Screen, because I think that that is significantly going to change which cities need help to fight all the things they're fighting.
We are at a disadvantage with the statewide metrics because of that.
Absolutely on that one. No other questions? To me, this is exciting. People of MILLBRAE, we're still going to figure out how this means, what this means for us. But we now have a few more points that we'll get on some grants, especially as we ramp up on bike and pedestrian trails up and down El Camino. And what we're really hoping for is an electric shuttle system between our west side and our east side, and all the way up to our rec center. Hint, hint on that one. That was our OBAG grant that we did not get. So anyway, thank you. Thank you, Kaki, who is one of our staff people on ABAG, and thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you very much.
And we'll make sure that we
Contact
get,
information's here, so if there are additional questions, feel free to reach out.
and we can get your presentation onto the city's website on that. I'm seeing a shaking of heads, so that if people want to go play with the data, we have a lot of scientists in MILLBRAE. So I'm really looking for some people who love to get down into the level of detail in data. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
I'd like to thank Sean for the presentation this evening. And Mayor, we have a internet outage on MCTV, so we can have a quick 5-minute recess so we can reconfigure so we get this
Absolutely.
live streaming on YouTube.
Okay. A voice from above. Thank you, Sean. Kaki, get home safe.
Mayor, if you'd like, I can give you a quick
Please
update.
give an
So
update.
the MTC feed, their power's out, so they're not able to live stream on YouTube currently. We are recording, so people can go back for the record and look at it. We just don't have a live stream. So anyone that would be interested in viewing the meeting in real time, they can log on to our Zoom meeting and via their telephone. Obviously, they don't have power. They can't do it with their computer, but they can do it via their telephone through the city's website.
Very good.
Is our Zoom still up?
Our Zoom is still up, yeah. We have power here. It's just, for some reason, there's no power over at MCTV and they can't connect to their Wi-Fi.
I would say, given this is a good learning experience for us to run through this in the future, make sure all of our rooms in City Hall have everything they need.
Yeah, we're actually operating off a generator, right? Generator
We are running on generator.
right now,
Okay.
correct? Yeah,
So that means the EOC in the Chakouti room would be working, but
yeah, we'll
interesting,
find out.
MCTV's downstairs room may not be connected to the same system.
It all should be, we'll troubleshoot and find out exactly what's going on and
Okay.
get it fixed.
Well, bringing us back, thank you. If you heard the city manager, we apologize that we're not able to show live streaming, but for everybody who's at home with no power, like my household, we'll watch it at a later date. And we welcome you back. We have just finished up the proclamation and presentation period. And next up is the city manager is going to give us an agenda overview and staff briefing.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening to you, members of the City Council. Tom Williams, City Manager. As we move forward with the agenda, under item number 2, we have calendar of events. That's an informational item. Reports of bills and claims. That's also informational item. And then a report out from the March 14th, 2023 closed session. There is no reportable action from the March 14th closed session. Then we move to approval of the meeting minutes. 2 meeting minutes. One is the regular meeting of December 13th, 2022. And then the next is the regular meeting of January 10th, 2023. We have no oral reports from any city committee or commission chairs this evening. Then we move into public communication. This is the item on the agenda that any member from the public can address the city council on any item not on the agenda, and comments are limited to 3 minutes. We have no items on the consent calendar this evening. We also have no public hearing items. That moves us into existing business, starting with item number 5. Item number 5 is to accept the Housing Element Annual Progress Report for the 2022 year and authorize transmittal to the California Department of Housing and Community Development and the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, and that's an action item. Item number 6 under new business is approval of a multi-jurisdictional electric bicycle sharing program and the corral locations and bike racks throughout the city. Item number 7 is to consider a resolution authorizing the city manager or designee to sign professional services agreements with 21 firms for on-call consultant services for an aggregate amount not to exceed $6 million for a base of 3 years, with an option to exercise 2 one-year options to extend those agreements with an aggregate amount not to exceed $2 million per option year. Item number 8 is to accept the fiscal year 2022-2023 mid-year budget report and adopt a resolution amending the fiscal year 2022-2023 adopted budget. Item number 9 is to authorize the mayor to sign a letter of support to our state representatives and officials to request their assistance in placing the property tax in lieu of vehicle license fee shortfall backfill into the governor's May revised budget. Then we move forward with council comments and adjournment. So real quick, the things happening in the city of MILLBRAE, we all know and experienced today's storm. So our public works is monitoring the storm and is working around the clock to ensure MILLBRAE continues to withstand the weather. We've all experienced the high winds today. We had a couple of public announcements go out on this wind advisory. Just warning people, if they can stay indoors, stay indoors. Our parks are closed and the spur trail is closed. So please adhere to those closures with this wind. We've had probably half a dozen trees that have fallen down, and there's limbs and branches that fall down. So please help us and abide by those park and spur trail closures for the public safety. Also, nice to report that the phone apps for our C-Click Fix are now up, so anyone can, you have an Apple phone or an Android phone, you can now download the app and make it easier for our C-Click Fix, which we're seeing great success as we continue to roll out that program and encourage our residents to use that as a means to communicate potholes, graffiti, tree branches that are down. We have the unhoused, anything that you see out in the city. Use the C-Click Fix app known as MILLBRAE Public Works that you can log into to help be the eyes and ears for continued maintenance and improvement of the city. We also have a series of commission and committee vacancies, and we're recruiting for that. All that information is on our website. If you have any questions, you can also contact our city clerk, Elaine Tran, at 650-259-2414. Our committee vacancies include our Community Enhancement Advisory Committee, our Cultural Arts Advisory Committee, our Parks and Recreation Commission, and our Youth Advisory Committee. And then we have some upcoming events I'd like to bring to your attention. March 16th, this Thursday at 12:30 p.m. is the MILLBRAE Gateway Station's unveiling of the Freedom Threshold, which commemorates the life of Harriet Tubman. That's at 12:30 in the plaza out at the Gateway Station on the east side of the BART station. March 25th at 10 a.m. is the Marina Vista Park Upgrade Pop-Up Meeting at Marina Vista Park. March 30th at 3:30 p.m. is a Residence Inn grand opening. That's the hotel also out at the MILLBRAE Station project. And April 14th is MILLBRAE goes to the movies, back to the movies, as the results of the community survey is the showing of the old classic Space Jams from 1996. So that was selected by the community. And again, that's MILLBRAE goes to the movies April 14th. That's at our Recreation Center starting at 6 p.m. And then just real quick, we did have a successful meeting out at Bayside Manor Park. We're getting quite a bit of feedback from the community. A total of 40 residents showed up to provide what they would like to see in the park. We also have an online survey that's open through March 31st. We have received a little over 160 respondents so far. That survey can be found at www.baysidemanormarinavistaparks.com. So Bayside Manor Marina Vista Parks, all one word, .com. And so we encourage all of our residents to log in and help us with the needs assessment and what they would like to see in the revision of the two parks. So Mayor, that concludes a quick update.
Thank you, City Manager. Do you have any more information on the tentative April 4th celebration or unveiling of the Pan Am Flight 7 Memorial at the MILLBRAE Historical Museum?
Mayor, I don't, but I can get information and make sure I get that emailed out to the City Council.
Great, so one more celebration. MILLBRAE is waking up. All right, thank you, City Manager. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes. These are the regular meeting minutes of December 13th, 2022, and the regular meeting minutes of January 10th, 2023. I have no public comments on this. We don't usually take comments. Any comments from council? And if not, motion and second?
So moved.
I think I heard a motion from Councilman Fung and a second from Vice Mayor. Thank you. City Clerk, could you call the vote?
Councilmember Pappen? Councilmember Cahalan?
Aye.
Councilmember Fung?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Goodman?
Aye.
Mayor Schneider?
Thank you. Aye.
Thank you. Both the regular meeting minutes of December 13th, 2022 and January 10th, 2023 are passed as presented by a vote of 5-0.
Excellent. Thank you, City Clerk. Oral reports from city committees and commissions, we have none. What I have heard from several is they are awaiting our goal setting so that they can then do their reports accordingly. So moving on to public communication. This is a comment period for members of the public, both here in person and on the phone or via Zoom, to comment on items that are not on the agenda. I have nothing in paper here. I'm looking at the city clerk. I see nothing via Zoom or phone.
That's correct, Mayor. We do not have
Okay.
any hands raised.
And with that, I'm going to close public comment or public communication. And moving on to consent calendar. In my 7 years on council, this is the first time we have no items in consent calendar. So we are bringing all the business to the people tonight. So no consent calendar. We have no public hearings tonight. Moving into existing business, we have a very important one, accept the Housing Element Annual Progress Report for 2022 and authorize transmittal to the California Department of Housing and Community Development and the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. This is an action item. And Mr. Morgan, please go ahead. Sorry, City Manager, I took your thunder. You're ready. It's yours.
I'm going to try to make sure I can hear myself in the microphone. Eduardo, how's this working for you? All right. Just let me know if my tone, I get too far away. All right. Every city in California has to file an annual progress report to HCD, and it's due on April 1st. Let me see here. And just next slide. I'll just have you guys do it. Not working. So just about every city in the state of California for the second half of March is bringing this before their city councils for consideration. So this is a universal thing that every city and county does. Tonight's a special night because we are at the end of our 5th regional housing needs assessment cycle. And RHNA cycles come every 8 years. 2022 is the last year in our 8-year cycle. As you know, we have a new housing element that we're working on finalizing, literally. I want to thank my staff, Roscoe and Nestor, and our housing consultants. We've been working literally day and night to get this housing element wrapped up, and we're hopeful that we can get it to Planning Commission on Monday. And the housing element is really the kickoff of each RHNA cycle. So whenever you go into a new cycle, you show to HCD through these annual reports what you've accomplished, what your housing production is, and what you've done. And so this one's special because it's the very last year of our 5th cycle, last year, 2022. And so it really is the capstone for that period. So you can go to the next slide. So as I said, it's an annual review of the city's progress, and it's in our implementation of the general plan and the housing element of the general plan. So the 5th cycle housing element, of course, was adopted 8 years ago. And so this is the last year that we're reporting to HCD on the progress towards all of the policies and programs that we've enshrined in that housing element. And then next year in 2023, that'll be the first year of our next RHNA cycle. So that's basically how this works. And the annual progress report is a snapshot of the current status of new and affordable housing production in MILLBRAE. It shows the state where we're at and our progress in meeting our RHNA goals. The state requires a city council public meeting to approve this and accept public comments, if any. And so, like I said, just about every agency in California between now and April 1st has this on their agenda. So next slide. And the APR is not, it's not a clear snapshot from how we know our housing progress in MILLBRAE. The APR only reports criteria based on building permits issued for new housing units. It does not show housing entitlements. It just shows the production for new building permits. And it doesn't take into account the housing production factors that are outside of the city's control. So for example, as you know, down the Sarah Station project in TOD1, we have entitlements for 488 housing units, including 73 affordable units. We can't build those right now because, as you know, we're having some disagreements with high-speed rail. They're blocking the development of that project. It would have been great if we had that underway, under construction right now, if we had those building permits issued, because then we would be able to be farther along in our annual housing production goals. So again, it's not a perfect snapshot of where we're at, but we try. Next slide, please. The other thing with the annual progress report is that if you build more housing units than what's required for each affordability category, it's not considered. So the state basically sets our goals. We want you to create this many housing units. We want this many building permits in each category: low, very low, moderate, and market rate, which is above moderate. So surplus housing production isn't allowed to be carried over into the next reporting cycle. So sometimes the housing cycle timeframe and methodology presents a fragmented view of our housing production in the city. And as you know, we're a small city, 3.5 square miles. One big project can really make those numbers look substantial. You know, we've had some really humongous entitlements lately, and I'll talk about that later in my presentation. But one huge entitlement can make your numbers look really good. And then in another year, you know, if you may not have any big projects with building permits issued, it may not look like you've created a lot of housing at all. But so it does prevent a fragmented overall picture. And what we're going to look at is where we were in 2022, and I'm also going to look back at how we did in our last 8 years. The state has a no net loss requirement for housing production as well. That's something that a lot of folks forget about. So if you remove housing, the state requires that we find some project somewhere else that makes up for it, because you don't want to show a deficit in your annual progress report. Fortunately, we haven't done that. I don't see that happening. Next slide. The other thing that the annual progress report is used for is to determine your SB 35 category. And there's 3 categories in SB 35. There's the you're not applicable. Very, very few cities in California fall into that category. There's the 10% affordability category, which we're in right now. And there's also the 50% affordability category. So that the annual progress report, these categories for SB 35 are based on the first half or the second half of your arena cycle. So every 4 years, that's the SB 35 category you fall into. So for the last, since SB 35 took effect, we've been in the 10% affordability category. But I've got some good news for tonight for next year, and I'll share that in just a moment. But and I'm going to come back to this topic in just a second. But so hold that thought. So our inclusionary housing ordinance also took effect in 2021, and that requires a 15% affordability rate for new housing construction. So if someone builds a multifamily building, 15% of those units have to be set aside for inclusionary housing. That is greater than the SB 35 10% requirement. I think it's important to point out that SB 35, when you do SB 35 in conjunction with a density bonus project, our local 15% affordability housing requirement, it only applies to the base density. It does not apply to that density bonus that the state grants. So we've had a couple of proposed projects in town where they've applied for a density bonus. For example, if you had 20 units allowed under the code and you got a density bonus for 50%, which would give you another 10 units, that extra 10 units isn't subject to our local 15% affordability requirement under this current 10% affordability rule in SB 35. So again, that's what the housing element annual progress report does. It decides your SB 35 category. I want to point that out in my presentation too. Next slide. But we have made significant progress, and this is a good news presentation. So we have good news to report. We've had a really good year in 2022. We had a lot of good accomplishments. We adopted the 2040 general plan update with the downtown and El Camino Real specific plan updates. Those allowed for increased density along the downtown and El Camino Real corridor. One of the things that's important to know is that in the city of MILLBRAE, we create the opportunity for housing, but we can't build the housing ourselves. We don't have that ability. So in this case, we're reporting on the outcome of all these building permits issued, but we just don't have the ability to build them ourselves. I wish we could. We don't have redevelopment anymore. But again, we create the opportunity. And the opportunity is there. We've done that. We've set the groundwork with our general plan updates. We also had a great year in 2022. Just 2 projects. You remember earlier in my slide, I mentioned how sometimes the APR gives you kind of a fragmented perspective of housing production. Well, just for entitlements last year, 2 projects, just 2 projects alone, 654 housing units among 2 projects. But with those projects, when they come in for building permits, that's going to make our annual progress report look really good for occupancy. So it's a very strange way to report housing production to the state. But again, that's how it is. They don't ask for C of O, they ask for building permits. And we continue to process several major applications for new housing in the city at various affordability levels. Next slide. So where did we do in 2022? Well, it was a normal year. It was a very average year for housing production in MILLBRAE. We issued building permits to construct 14 new housing units, including 4 low and 4 very low. So 14 housing units these are building permits that we issued for new housing. That sounds like a really low number, but that's actually normal. That's a normal year. When we have these large multifamily buildings like the Rollins, like last year, that's 80 units by itself. It makes it look like our production is pretty substantial. But as you know, MILLBRAE is built out. We don't have a lot of vacant land. We're not churning out single family homes like some communities might in the Central Valley. So it was a normal year for housing production. But the good news, the news that we really want to report out tonight that we're very excited about, is that we successfully met our 5th RHNA cycle goal for market rate housing production. That's really a great achievement. We met our market rate goal from the state. And that's really exciting. And why is that exciting? That's because under SB 35, when the next criteria come out, we will be in the 50% affordability range, not the 10% affordability range. Because you remember earlier in the presentation, if you could jump back a couple of slides. So remember I mentioned that the annual housing progress report is used to determine the SB 35 category. Well, because we met our market rate housing production for the 5th cycle, that means the next year, the SB 35, we will no longer be in the 10% category. We should be in the 50% category. So that's what that means. And that's why this is really a good year. So that means when people come in with an SB 35 project in the next 4 years, they would have to come into the 50% cycle. Does that make sense? All right, so that's why this is really great news, is because it's very great. It's great that we met our market rate production. If you could go back to where I was before. Sorry, I wish I had a clicker that worked, but oh well. So that's great news. We're excited for that. Much of our 5th cycle housing production came from just 2 large projects, the Gateway at MILLBRAE Station and the Rollins. So like I said, those 2 projects are humongous. They added a lot of units. So just those 2 projects really helped us go over the top with our RHNA numbers. So that's really good news. Next slide, please. And so this is it. This is the table. This is what it all leads up to. And you can see where we're at. So the first category, we've got our 5th cycle RHNA goals for the 8-year cycle. And that's what the state of California said. These are your housing production goals. This is what we want you to meet. Of course, the next category is what we did for those first few years up to 2021. 2022 is just last year's production. But again, the total 5th cycle permitted units that we did, we exceeded our above moderate benchmark for goals. The state said, we want you to build 257 units of market rate housing. We built 314 units in that cycle. So we exceeded our goal, and so we met that. But we didn't build enough very low or moderate housing. We were about 50% off production for low and moderate. But again, our inclusionary housing ordinances just came on the books in 2021. So just through this last RHNA cycle, we got all the tools in place that we need. So we're very hopeful that the next RHNA cycle, we're going to be very productive. We're going to get that housing. We're going to meet our goals because like I said, we've created the opportunity. We've laid the groundwork to be successful in our next RHNA cycle. And the good news is we've met our above moderate goals. And that's great for a city that's built out. It's just 3.5 square miles. I think that's really quite an achievement. So that's good news. Before I go on, anybody have any questions on the table in front of you? I know it's a little bit complicated.
Council, any questions? Okay, I think we'll keep going.
Mayor, if there's no, sorry, Andy.
Go ahead.
I think this is important too. I think Andy brought it up and maybe you're going to continue, but the problem with the reporting that HCD limits municipalities and reporting, you can see on our above moderate, 257 was the goal. We built 314. So that's 57 housing units that are not counted in the state production of housing. And I think that's a fatal flaw in the methodology up at the state of California. So MILLBRAE, as small as we are, have 57 units that are not counted in the housing production. That doesn't go on anybody's market study. That doesn't go up to the state of California. The production of housing in the state of California, it's just missed. It just isn't counted. So I wanted to bring that to the attention, of all of you so you kind of understand that we're limited, as Andy said, on the box that HCD puts cities into as we report it.
I would only add to that HCD should take responsibility for the 488 units that would be under construction now if a state agency hadn't blocked that. They have to take some responsibility too. We've done the work and they've stopped it, and we don't get to acknowledge that either.
Yeah, no, that's another good point. So on the low income row, where we, our deficit of 31, there are 73 affordable units in Sarah Station. So if that project, city council approved it, it's entitled, it probably would have been complete by now, just as Sarah
too.
Station. And we would have exceeded our low income, because we're only deficient 31, but those are 73 housing units. So we would have exceeded by, 40 something housing units in excess of our low income. So this is uniquely MILLBRAE, and I think that story needs to be understood, because of the impact that high-speed rail has. It's not going to be here for 30 years. That's a reality. And we can't produce housing, and that's a blighted 8 acres of land adopted in high-speed rail's CEQA document, their EIR, for surface parking.
I was going to do this in my closing comments for this one, but I am hoping that all of our staff, for these things that don't work right, that we create our own legislative platform and we ask our assembly person and our senator to start working through these things that simply do not make sense and are not fair. So thank you. Keep going.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Councilwoman Pappen.
I guess the questions are flowing now. So, your presentation here is good. The report online, the public record, needs to show everything that's in the PowerPoint here. Because what happens is the reporter just looks at the report, which is missing so many things here. I really need to ask that the PowerPoint be attached or something here.
Absolutely.
And that there needs to be a footnote, as was just described, regarding high-speed rail's interference, because that is so significant here for us. We just need to put that out there in the press each and every single time. So thank you, I know we had a conversation earlier, for emphasizing the 15%. I'm hoping when we get to goals, we can talk about 20%, because that's where we need to be, given this SB 35. So in addition to that, we need to note AB 1482, which is still the law. It's the Tenant Protection Act, which has a rent control, which has a relocation fee attached to it. These are laws that impact us here. And so we need to note them in our report. And I really do appreciate staff. The public record is so important. So please include this, add those 2 footnotes there, and really lead with that 15% that we have. And if we can explain further, because I'm not sure it was that clear in your presentation at the moment, but really determining here is our 15%, given the SB 35, that number is reduced, as you said. It does not apply to the base number. And that's the message we need to send to our elected representatives, but it has to be in the record, because I can tell you right now, 2 days from now, the reporter will look at the tape and just look at the report, and we will be shortchanged here. We're really trying desperately to provide affordable housing units. And I'm going to mention real quick here, because I did the homework, what we consider affordable. Right now at the BART station, the apartment's opening up. So the studios run from $3,125 to $3,675.
That's the market rate.
That's the market rate. 1 bedroom, $3,275 to $4,340. 2 bedroom, $4,750 to $5,250. The few 300s, $6,680 to close to $7,000. That is what the market is showing. So again, I'm hoping this council can really get more affordability wherever we can. And then hopefully we can work on the legislation that will allow us whatever surplus, because if they're getting these kind of rates from market, they're not hurting. We are when we can't afford, have affordability. So thank you, but please, this has to be in the record for them to find and see.
Thank you.
Excellent point, Councilwoman. I didn't know AB 1482, the relocation of tenants, but I use that when I talk to people about the Anton project, where we're losing 8 affordable existing, and we can't even have the people living there have first dibs on any Millbrae-produced affordable housing. So to go along with what Councilwoman Pappen said, can we also tell that story about the loss of 8 for 19 gross, but really a net of 11 using SB 330 on that? So we talked about that one before, so thank you.
Mayor, I'm sure there's questions of the council, but I would like to address Councilmember Pappen's record correction, if I may, because I think it's important. So on page 2 of 4 of the staff report that the council member referenced, the very last bullet point on page 2, continue processing several major planning applications for new housing development in the city at various affordability levels, including, and I want to address 140 El Camino because there's some confusion with one of the articles in the newspaper. So that project in total is 30 units. The base density, as Andy mentioned, is 20 units. Our 15% affordable inclusionary housing ordinance requires 15% to be affordable, so 15% of 20 is 3. Now, when a developer builds affordable housing, they can also enact the state density housing bonus. And in this particular development project, it's a 50% additional bonus. 50% of 20 units is 10. Therefore, that project can develop 30 housing units. The 10 additional housing units were prohibited by state law from applying our local inclusionary affordability. So that's where then the effective rate of the affordability of 30 units, 3 are affordable, is 10%. So there was confusion at the last meeting on, well, is it 15% or 10%? The effective affordability is 10%. We require 15%, but we are prohibited by state law from applying our 15% affordability to the density bonus units. So for the record, and I think this is very important to understand, that that is the case. And so unfortunately, that would be 1.5, 1.5 more units. We round up, get 2 units, additional affordability off of this project if we could apply the city's 15% affordable housing ordinance to that.
Thank you,
So does
City
that
Manager.
provide clarity?
Well, it would provide, it does verbally speaking. I need that to be in the written report, because this is a document here that people may not listen to everything here. I'm pleased if it's a footnote that explains that, because then anyone from the legislature or the public will see how SB 35 is really not giving us what we're asking for here. And given the prices, I just mentioned that the developers are going to make a significant amount of money. So thank you very much. I appreciate the explanations, but let's make our record.
I'm going to give, Cal Cities, League of California Cities is having their conference, their legislative conference, the middle of April, around the 12th to the 14th, I think. So we've got that time to identify specific examples of where state housing laws are hurting affordability. And we can bring that. I know I'm going. I don't know if any of the other electeds are going. There is a small lobby component for that, but that would be the time to bring it up to Cal City so that they've got, their lobbyists have in their hands examples, real world examples of how these housing laws are hurting our affordability and are hurting our ability to keep Millbrae residents staying here if their housing is removed to build larger projects on that. So we've got some time for that, but thank you. This is what happens when you give us time to talk before you finish your presentation. Please go ahead.
Oh, no, I don't mind at all. Thank you. The next slide, please. So, and on Councilmember Pappen's note, I also do want to point out a correction on page 3 of 4 at the very bottom paragraph, third line. where it points out some of our core programs, some of our implementation measures that are ongoing. It says, e.g. rental housing assistance, home sharing and BMR resale, and rental controls. We do not have rent control in MILLBRAE. That is not, and I want to make that real clear for the record, and I want to make sure that that's included with those corrections that you asked for.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we actually do have a form of it given AB 1482.
That's
So
correct,
let's just
state law.
footnote it.
That's
State
right.
law. Thank you so much.
Right, and absolutely, that's correct. There is a state law about that.
But-
And
Andy,
but
if I may,
Yeah, go ahead.
maybe a little bit further explanation on that,
Yeah,
what you were referring to was old redevelopment housing projects that we still have in our inventory as part of the successor agency. They're deed restricted
correct.
from, they can't be market rate. They have to continue to be affordable, so.
That's right. And so when we talk about that, what we refer to, we're basically, one of the things that we do on an ongoing basis, and this is in my presentation, is that we do have to monitor affordable unit resales. That's one of the things that my staff and I have to keep track of. So if under redevelopment, if we have a MILLBRAE resident who qualified to purchase a home with a home assistance program at an affordable rate, those homes are deed restricted for affordability. So if they sell those homes, we as a city in community development have to make sure that the transfer sale is to another affordable person, or if the time period is up, that they pay the city back if they have some kind of mortgage assistance program. So that's one of the ongoing programs that we do monitor here in the city of MILLBRAE.
Can I just add one final note here? Just for every property owner in the city of Mill, if you can put a link to AB, say 1482 here,
Yes.
because if anybody has a tenant, you were supposed to notify them and attach a copy of
That's right.
1482 to your lease.
And
if you have
yes.
not done that yet,
Yes.
I think a lot of people haven't done that yet.
I admit I sent my landlord a letter saying you didn't do that because it's my
Yeah,
own personal
I mean,
thing, but yes.
You probably, I think you're not prohibited from doing it now, but
I'm very
every
familiar
single
with the
lease
bill.
every single tenant was supposed to get a copy of that,
Yeah.
and I think it's something.
I am a renter myself, and I do know that program.
Okay, let's just help out our local people if we can. Thank you.
Absolutely. And when people reach out to us, when our local residents reach out to us at the city, we do partner with other organizations that provide housing services. We partner with a number of regional housing service partners like Heart of San Mateo. They're a financing service. They have they have like a first-time home buyer loan program, things of that nature. So we partner with them. We partner with HIP Housing. We have a home sharing program through HIP Housing. So we also partner with them. As I said, we monitor our affordable unit resales. We also make sure that our multifamily housing complies with their inclusionary housing requirements. So as you stated earlier, the Gateway at MILLBRAE Station has some inclusionary units. We make sure that those apartment complexes are providing those inclusionary units to the people who are qualified to live in them. So that's part of our ongoing monitoring program. So when we use the phrase rental controls, we didn't mean we don't have rent control. That's the kind of control that we do here. It's a quality control. We're making sure that things are being implemented the way they're supposed to. We also implement in community development the affordable housing requirements, and we make sure that people pay their affordable housing commercial linkage fee. So that's just kind of a snapshot of all the ongoing core programs that we do in community development. And I just want to give Christy credit because Christy is actually the point person on a lot of these programs. So, and I think she's been doing a great job of keeping track of a lot of these things. And I'm very thankful for her help in that particular category. And we do have, our new programs. Obviously, as I mentioned, we updated our 2040 general plan just last fall. Last winter, downtown El Camino Real specific plan as well. And we also launched a pilot program in 2022 to address homelessness in MILLBRAE in partnership with our nonprofit organization, Life Moves. And Life Moves I know we've talked about it a lot here at council. It's been a great program, a lot of good things. So, but as I said, more to come in 2023. We're hopeful that next year we outdo this year's annual report. So 1 year from now, I hope to be in front of you tonight with more good news and show you how far we've come. So I think that's it. My next slide. So our recommendation for you this evening is we're asking that the council take public comments, if any, and accept motion to accept the housing element annual progress report and authorize transmittal to HCD and other pertinent state agencies. So with that, I'm happy to answer any further questions.
Very good. Council, if it's okay with you, let me open it up for the public, and then we'll come back to another round on that. I have no council comments by hand. Do you have any?
Mayor, I do not.
Yeah, a couple people did call me. I thought they were going to come tonight, but it looks like your presentation was that good. Giving people a few more seconds to raise their hands or to make sure that Eduardo can see you, that you have comments. Okay, closing public comment. Before bringing it back to a motion, when I was doing my own goal setting and realized that we're now at an equity focus area, does that mean we need to go back to the general plan and the specific plan and at least update a new map in there? So that any developer coming in might see that it might assist them in getting funding. There's another form of funding that the large and the medium-sized cities in California get directly. They're called community development block grants. Small cities under $50,000 do not get those funds. In San Mateo County, they go to the county, and the county works with nonprofit organizations, housing developers. So up until the core project, the Rollins, the Veterans Preferred Housing Project at the Gateway, I don't believe we've ever had any CDBG funds come into MILLBRAE. You can also use CDBG, Community Development Block Grants, for housing preservation work on that. So now that, but it helps to have this corridor now. So hopefully within everything else that your staff is doing, kind of dive into that and see if we need to update the plan so that developers coming in might have to do X, Y, or Z, or have access to funding. Let's get ready for that. That could be a great 2023 thing. With that, any other comments? Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Okay, so we're going to pass this. I'm worried about what's up on the website. You know, somehow we need to telegraph updated reason, whatever you can do, please. It's kind of an uphill battle for all of the electeds these days, and the reporters just don't seem to spend that much time. So if you could help us out there, great.
Well, I work with the city clerk to see if we can put a corrected staff report up.
And real quick, so update from PG&E, but they've restored another 1,000 customers in MILLBRAE. We have about 1,950 left. So thank you for those efforts. Sadly, downtown is still out. There will be merchandise damage. Sorry for the news flash.
Thank you, Councilwoman Pappen. Comments? If there can be a motion to approve and send it forward with making sure we capture everything that the Councilwoman brought up. I agree with all the points. Let's make it as hard to miss as possible. They need to start listening to us. And we have a little bit more support perhaps now up in the Assembly.
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Fung. Second by Councilwoman Pappen. Any further discussion? City Clerk, if you could call the vote.
Certainly, Mayor. Councilmember Pappen?
Yes.
Councilmember Cahalan?
Aye.
Councilmember Fung?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Goodman? Mayor Schneider?
Aye.
The City Council accepts the Housing Element Annual Progress Report for 2022 and authorizes the transmittal to the California Department of Housing and Community Development and Governor's Office of Planning and Research by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you. And before moving on to the next agenda item, I didn't like the article in the Daily Journal a couple of days ago either, and I did call the reporter, and I did actually talk to one of the board members of the Housing Leadership Council. I would request reporters and housing advocates, feel free to contact me. I'm sure any other council member here would be happy to talk to you and give you correct information. I know that it's a new ledge person for Housing Leadership Council, but the information in the article about how long it takes us to approve permits was absolutely incorrect. So please, reporters, Housing Leadership Group, come and talk to us. And please, we could still use your help with high-speed rail. They're still taking 8.5 acres out of Little MILLBRAE, 3.2 square miles, to turn into a surface parking lot. So come out and help us do the right thing. And then don't complain to us like someone did Sunday about our jobs housing balance when we have by far more housing than we have jobs. And they were complaining about Longfellow, which is just a great success story for MILLBRAE. Thank you. Okay, moving on. And thank you, staff. Thank you. Next up is to accept the fiscal year 2022-2023 mid-year budget report and adopt a resolution amending the 2022-2023 adopted budget. This is an action item. And do we have Mr. Sung?
Mayor, if I may, so that's item number 7. Item number 6.
Oh, I'm
It's
sorry.
small. It's small at the bottom of the page.
Okay,
Easy
no,
to miss.
no, I just jumped to new business. I'm completely wrong. Okay, for the record, item number 6. Sorry. Approve multi-jurisdictional electric bicycle sharing program corral locations and bike racks. And thank you and welcome, Ms. Papajohn.
Thank you, Mayor Schneider, Vice Mayor Goodman, council members. I'm Andrea Papajohn, City of MILLBRAE, and I am so excited to present the parking corral locations and bike racks for your approval. Next slide, please. Public Works staff, along with environmental programs and a SPIN representative, did a walkthrough of potential locations for corrals in the city of MILLBRAE. We took all comments from the last council meeting that we presented February 14th under consideration. So we considered making sure the corrals had good lighting, making sure that they weren't next to a parked car and they didn't take a parking space. We also considered the size of the corrals and the surface condition. And so, I apologize. These are actually the pictures of the corrals, what they look like. They're flexible striping, either concrete vinyl or temporary marking tape. Next slide, please. So what I was continuing with was these are the proposed locations. There are 16 locations on this map. In the staff report, there were 13. We added 3 since the staff report was distributed. And I will talk about each one individually. But as I was mentioning, we did take all the council considerations of, not next to parked cars and good lighting and also not taking up parking spaces. So let's look at each one. Next slide, please. So the picture on the left is the recreation center. We recommend putting a corral around the existing bike rack pictured on the right. And it has good lighting, not taking a parking space. The corral would be approximately 25 feet by 6 feet. Next slide, please. Yes, picture of the library on the left. There's an existing bike rack, just as you can see in the picture on the right. It's a waveform bike rack. We recommend putting a corral around that bike rack. It'd be about 6 by 10 feet, and it has easy access to the road there as well, and good lighting. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the picture on the left, Park Place and El Camino Real. It is close to the bus stop, and it's actually been designated as a location where people are more likely to want to use micromobility service. We recommend a 6 by 10 foot corral on the picture on the right on that sidewalk area. And we could install a bike rack there as well. And there's good lighting. Next slide, please. Okay, Central Park pictured on the left. Now the place that we suggest for the corral is next to the rec center and conveniently right on that 10 by 10 existing concrete slab. Now this is one of 3 locations that does not have good direct lighting, but we recommend it. It's next to the rec center and there's a lot of activity in the park, so we think it's a good location. Next slide. Okay, this is Spur Trail across from Taylor Middle School. The picture on the right is where the staff recommends the corral. It's kind of a narrow concrete strip. So in this location, we recommend the wave bike rack because of just the shape of the concrete there. And the corral would probably be 4.5 feet by 12 approximately. And this is actually the second of 3 locations that does not have direct lighting. Okay, next slide. Skate park. On the left, you can see the aerial view, and then on the right, the picture, we would propose a 6 by 10 foot corral under the street light. I think it'd be a great location. We all think it'd be a great location for active members. Next slide, please. Okay, Hillcrest and Magnolia. This is a commercial zone. So next to our parking lot, but not in a parking space. So if you can see the picture on the right, we propose a corral right behind that parking bench. What we would do is we would put down decomposed granite and then secure a bike rack with concrete underneath that. So it would be approximately 6 by 10 corral there. Okay, next slide. Mosta Grove. On the left, we recommend a corral in that grassy area. Again, we would use decomposed granite and then underneath concrete to secure the bike rack. It's right across, obviously across from Rotary Park. It's a convenient location. It's off the street. And this is the third location that does not have great lighting. Okay, next, please. Green Hills Park. There is a concrete pad right there. It would fit nicely, a 6 by 6 corral. And so wouldn't take up a parking space. It's great for that area. Next, please. Lion Bill Mitchell Park, pictured on the left, and we've identified a 6 by 10 corral off the street on the picture on the right. Good lighting and convenient for riders in that location as well. Next slide. Hemlock and Hillcrest. So the corral, we would recommend the location on the right. It's off the street and it would be in that grassy area. Again, we would use decomposed granite and concrete to secure the bike rack. It could be a 6 by 10 corral. Okay, next. Monterey and San Jose. It's well lit. A 6 by 10 corral would be convenient in this neighborhood, and it's off the path, so not to obstruct anything. Next slide, please. City Parking Lot A. This is located at Sierra and Linden. It's close to the Caltrain and BART for commuters, so ideal for commuters, and well lit. The picture on the right shows that triangle space. We recommend a 6 by 10 corral in that location. Next slide. This is the El Camino Real frontage road at the corner of Hillcrest. So there's a motorcycle parking lot there in that space pictured on the right. And we recommend using some of that space for a corral. We have not measured this one, but we recommend that would be a convenient location. Next, please. Farmers Market parking lot. This one, we recommend a corral. It could be right by that light post on the picture on the right. And we have not measured this one, but obviously good lighting and a convenient downtown location. And last one, city parking lot, Broadway and Taylor. The corral could go on the landscape area on the right. And again, in our downtown area, convenient, and we could use decomposed granite and concrete to secure the bike rack. Okay, so those are corral locations. Now I'd like to just present 2 bike rack proposals. One is This is the bike rack that is recommended in our MILLBRAE specific plan, which was adopted December of 2022. And we recommend using this as it has the aesthetics of, that the city has chosen. And so these bike racks could be installed in any of the locations except for 2 of the smaller locations at Spur Trail and the one off Hillcrest, which are a little bit tight. So next slide is the Wave bike rack. This is the one that's already existing at the library parking lot. So we would recommend this for the tighter locations. Okay, and next slide. So that is my presentation. We would like approval for the bike corral locations and the bike racks, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Papajohn. Nice presentation. Comments? I see Councilwoman Pappen.
Thank you. A couple things. So some of the areas you pointed out had landscaping. Are we going to relocate some of the lamps, or one actually had a tree, I think, down on Broadway? I'd hate to see landscaping put to waste. In other words, if they can be just moved over a bit, that would be helpful.
To move the corral or move the landscaping?
The landscape.
We could certainly consider that. We went as a team and we just tried to identify the best locations possible, but I hear you. And
We don't want to lose a
yeah.
tree. So the one on Broadway definitely had a tree.
okay, thank you for going
The
back to that one.
Yeah, right there. And I'm dying to make that little message board an electronic board at some point in time so that we can get some real information downtown there. Secondarily, so, yeah, we don't
And the
want to
corrals
lose.
can be any size that that's appropriate. So perhaps we start with a smaller corral size. We would not want to interfere with the tree.
Okay, well, and I'm just questioning,
Yeah.
given the historic wins we're having here, you set up these corrals, what is it? I mean, things are flying everywhere. If
Yeah.
these bikes go in, how sturdy are they? How heavy they are?
85 pounds. They have 2 kickstands. They're super sturdy. Of course, these wins have been like
know.
beyond.
That's what I'm
So
concerned
that's why
with.
we chose, I think, out of the 16 locations, there's one that is actually next to a parking spot. None of the others are next to parking spots. I think just the one right before this, please. This is the only one that's next to a parked car, and this was kind of added as a convenient location, but yeah.
Yeah,
this-
I mean, just wondering, I
So-
mean, I have no problem with the racks that you've presented
Mm-hmm.
here. I'm just concerned about the wind, and I'm also concerned about, you have a corral, but do we have directionals? Do we have signage? Ground with a couple arrows, something that people know these are for the electric bikes. Some guidance would be helpful. I'm sure it's probably on an app somewhere, but
Correct.
just in case the battery goes out or something, it would be very, I think, beneficial to people. Signage now, and again, it can just be on the ground.
Right.
But I would encourage that. I know what's going to happen at Lions Park is whatever you designate is also going to be stroller parking. So we'll see some of that doubling up, but I think that's fine. So those are my comments there. Let's just try to save whatever landscaping we can, not necessarily save it, but just move it to an area that is around there somewhere, please.
Thank you. May I invite Derek Stalen to come up here as well? He's a representative from SPIN. And he was at the meeting on February 14th, but on Zoom. And he did the walkthrough with us. So we've been working closely together and we're super excited. We're getting really close. But Derek, maybe you could comment about signage. I know we have intentions to put signage on. Perhaps you could give us some examples of what's been done
And real
before.
quick too, we thought about high schools. I mean, there is an age limit here, but I didn't see anything
in the vicinity of Mills or Cappuccino?
We did reach out to every school in MILLBRAE, and we are working with them, but we have not.
We have to be careful with
Yeah.
elementary schools because you have to be a
Correct.
certain age. But
Yes.
I'm sure we can get the assistance of the high schools that you let us know.
We have reached out to them. We are talking to them about
Okay.
a good location. Yes, thank you.
Can I step in? So this is sort of the first phase, the public property, and then that could fall into the second phase because there's fewer than in our first staff report.
Right, there were 31 that we had identified initially. 15 were public and 16 were private, unless I have that. Yeah, and.
Or at least not City of Millbrae.
Correct, correct. And so we, yes, we thought it would be more efficient to just work with the city property first, get the program launched, see where the, high utilization is, and then continue to work with private locations as well. Yeah.
Madam Mayor, we do have a city location at the top of the hill, Hillcrest. Going up the hill, you said these bikes can make it up the hill. It'd be nice to have one up at the top of the hill.
Derek and I need to go up there. I don't know where that exactly is,
We
but
have
I
a
will
water,
find
by
out.
where we have a water tank and there's a gas station.
Okay, got it. We have
There
city
is-
property there.
There's
Okay.
some little city property there that would be very nice.
Thank you for your comments.
And it's lovely to see you in person if you wanted to comment on signage.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me tonight. So what I would recommend for some kind of signage is a really simple decal that goes in the middle of the box, and it can say it's for shared mobility devices. It doesn't have to be specific to spin, of course, because I think part of the idea is, we might want to try to leave these racks open for people to bring their personal bike too. So let it be known that it's for everyone to use, but also, put your shared device here too. There's plenty of examples of them across other cities and university campuses. They can be colored, they can be just simple white, paint, all different options. So yeah, we can look at that.
Councilman Fung.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. Very good strategic 16 location there to get started. And then as you work on the next phase of it after this, I'd like to see us work with some of the private owner a little bit more, going into the hotel, trying to see if we can offer these e-bikes so that we can give these opportunities to the visitors to MILLBRAE to use these e-bike as the last mile transportation so that they can visit our downtown. And then as we move forward, look for more opportunities, around our central business district where we can have more of these corrals so that we can organize these e-bikes and really help promote economic development downtown. Also, I think I've said that last time, that we have DOD2 coming up online relatively soon here with a lot of new high-paying jobs. We want to make sure that these e-bikes are being offered to those people who are coming in to our city and work every day, so that when they visit our downtown, they don't need to drive their private vehicle. They can use these e-bikes as their last mile transportation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation and all of these updates. Thank you for the comment about personal bikes, because I was going to ask about that, because the first two locations were existing personal bike locations, so it's great to hear that they're for both. I echo what Councilmember Pappen said about having a location in the far west side of the city. And then I think last time we talked about concerns of these bikes on the spur trail, because they're pretty fast. And there's several of the corrals that are very close to the spur trail. So I don't know if we might want signage or something around that, because folks who pick up the bikes there might be pretty tempted to just hop on the spur trail. So just a thought to put out there if we have concerns about the speed of those bikes and the pedestrians or people with their dogs or kids in strollers along the spur trail with these bikes.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, we can put up, we can do a couple things. We can either sort of test it out and see how it's going. And if we find it that people are just riding too quickly, up to 30 miles an hour on using the electric assist, we could geofence around the spur trail and not allow the electric assist. So then you just have to pedal. And I think that they go up to 20 miles an hour, or back me up here.
Yeah, so 20 miles per hour, that's the standard top speed. But we can geofence in a slow ride zone, aptly named, to go any limit lower than that.
Okay, so
First,
20 is top speed.
20 is top speed. And for slow ride zones, we usually see them between, I think it's between like 7 and 10 miles per hour. You can, of course, drop it slower than that, but it starts to get tricky to be able to pedal because, like you mentioned, balance and the bike it's heavy, you know? So we would almost only want to drop a slow ride zone lower than that if we wanted to, for some reason, discourage ridership as a whole. And then when you get that slow too, below that 7 mile per hour speed, you start to get closer to that walking speed, the closer you get to 5, 4, 3 miles per hour. But the point is there is a lot of flexibility with how we can design this. I'm sure over time, we're going to want to iterate these things.
That makes me wonder if we wanted to, if the council supports this, we run one test area and that location by the skateboard park going up to Mosta Park might be the area to kind of test that. It also makes me wonder that those of us who've cycled a lot, we're familiar with on your right phrase, but a lot of people nowadays don't know it, and pedestrians don't necessarily know it. We might need a little bit of an education on the terminology used when you're trying to pass people. And then in terms of long-term signage, I still hope that the whole Bay Area will have the same signage and will be universal, so it'll be the same city by city. But I'm wondering, didn't we paint part of the spur trail with a white stripe down the middle? And is that the part? We didn't. Maybe it's other trails that I've been on where they've put that white stripe and then they kind of have arrows so you know that you're passing someone. I hate to do that because I like the fact that we don't have all that extra messaging at us when we're trying to relax in quasi-nature, but we might have to think about that. And what you've done in other trail situations. The e-bike on trails, I hope, will be a topic at Silicon Valley Bike Coalition's event this August, and it's back in Mountain View. And I still hope it's going to come to CCAG BPAC, but I don't know the agenda. I might be the chair, but I don't see the agenda until 3 days before. I don't know yet. Anything else? I would say for the locations with trees, we hang on to our trees. Trees are climate change, trees are climate or heat resiliency, and then move the other shrubs.
Great. I share your, yes.
Yeah,
We can do that,
and these,
for
and the
sure,
only
yeah.
other thing I would add, the library location, the Japanese Cultural Festival uses a lot of that space. That we can always adapt around it, as does the Friends of MILLBRAE Library. They have their book sales right in that area. So we're taking out a little chunk of their sales area. So let's just try to make it look as good as possible.
Around the bike rack?
Yeah, the one around the library, because that's so used.
Right.
I mean, that is a very well used, one of our few piazzas in MILLBRAE, and it's well used. So make it look as good as you can. Any other comments? Opening it up for public comment. I have nothing.
I do see one caller with their hand raised.
Okay, if you could please call them.
Okay. Nathan, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity to address the council on this important matter. It's definitely a really exciting program. The only minor comment I wanted to make was with respect to clearance. I don't think I saw too many situations where this might arise, but I know that there are times where particularly with the waveform bike racks, some property owners, I guess, don't know how much room a bike actually needs, so they'll put those racks right up against a wall, and it's kind of difficult to park bikes in such a configuration. So I would just want to advise how you all on making sure that there's adequate clearance so that a bike can actually be locked properly to these racks, so it's not hemmed in by any walls or anything fixed. Thank you so much, and really excited to see these bikes start arriving in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chan. Anyone else?
Mayor, I do not see any more hands.
Okay, we've given it a few minutes, closing public comment. That makes me think of two other things. The location at the farmer's market. During the Art and Wine Festival, there had historically been a stage there, but there's some planting areas that have no plants in them, so you may not have to give up a parking place. It's right next, it's very close to Wonderful Restaurant. There's something else, I think a wine shop right next door, right at the end, and then there's a bench. And then there's some trees, unless we lost a couple of the trees. It was one of the few shady spots on that block. But then there's a big planting area that really just has tan bark. And maybe that would save that parking place and save that location for farmers market people and still meet the needs.
Great,
And be
thank
a little
you.
bit wind
Yeah.
protected too, kind of tucked in there.
Yeah, I think the spot we proposed was not a parking space, but it's right next to one. So in the event a bike tipped or, I mean, it was just close call, like getting in and out of a car if there was bike parked right there in that spot. So thank you for your suggestion to look
Well,
next to the wonderful restaurant.
And I hate to think this, but sometimes there are some car drivers who really dislike bicycles. So maybe we want to put them where they're a little bit more protected. Expensive units there. Last,
Is it, here's the, maybe where,
so
which
look,
side
see
is it
where
on?
see where the star is? Move to your left and then down to the street towards Broadway. You can see a little bit of tan bark right there. It's right in back there, and it's actually a really big area.
Oh,
I only know because I've emptied the bottles that we've served for that beverage location. So I know that spot pretty well. And it tends to get trampled on all the time, so there's nothing living there.
great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Last comment then, in Redwood City, at their bike racks, they have an artist that is paid for through their downtown business improvement district. It's called Shadow Art. They're just so much fun. So if this is successful, then make sure that the Cultural Arts Advisory Committee knows that that's a future project we would like to do. Because I have a collection of the various art pieces that have been done out there. They just make you smile. And maybe those people that hate cyclists will see that and say, okay, maybe. Go ahead, Councilman.
Yes, so as far as the farmer's market parking lot location, I think in general, not just that particular location, finding the corral location where there's nearby electrical might not be a bad idea as we look to future, how some of these corral could also be a charging stations for your bike, right? Instead of just picking them up onto your truck and getting them recharged, having the corral in the future where these e-bikes could be charged in place certainly help reduce operating costs and making it more sustainable, right? So that they get more available to the riders. So something to think about.
Yeah, and while I agree with that, I think that's a great idea. One thing to note is the batteries in our bicycles are actually swappable. So when we go to recharge a bike, we remove the battery. There's a set of batteries, and bring them back to the warehouse. And then on the fly, on the street in real time, that's when we swap them back. So we're moving more and more towards operations like that to become more sustainable, environmentally friendly, and efficient ultimately. And I think something like that in the future, having a charging spot on site, I think it's a fantastic idea.
Thank you. If there are no further comments or questions, we need a motion. This is an action.
We also need to pick a color.
I'm sorry?
Is it true that we also need to pick a color? The color of the corral?
Well, you can, or we would match what's at the recreation center.
Oh,
Which is
But it's up
silver,
to
isn't
you.
it?
Quick question, the photo doesn't seem to be low sheen. I kind of like the shiny. You're only offering us low sheen? I like the shiny one.
I know I shouldn't be bringing that up.
I can ask. We are happy to ask I'm sure they have multiple options.
Well, it's funny here, it says matte black.
Well, I don't know but I like the photo one. I don't want to be misrepresented here.
Yeah, the photo looks good.
But is it blue ash or is it dusk?
Well, whatever it
Or
is.
obsidian.
They only look like they're giving us a low sheen, and I think there's shinier in the photo. So what's the difference?
I think once I see that in person, I'm gonna have a real challenge trying to figure out exactly what the name of that color is.
But I think we have to tell them what they are supposed to go out and order tonight. So
What color's in the photo, if you don't mind telling me? What's represented in the photo?
At the rec, okay.
having
Right.
purchased many things from my bathroom, that looks like brushed nickel to me. With a
Right,
satin
here are the
finish.
ones at the rec center. Now, this is a different vendor than the ones in the MILLBRAE specific plan. So, in short, we did look into it. These are tubular, and the ones in the MILLBRAE specific plan are, let me get the term, it's here. Yeah, they're intersecting forms. So they're slightly different. That's why the colors aren't going to be exact. And to answer, I
And what's the
don't have an
lifespan
answer of
of
what
these?
color is in this picture. It did not say this was in our MILLBRAE specific plan. We pulled that photo from the plan. And then when we went to the vendor, we found the color bar.
So
Looks to
I'm
me like
feeling a
they're
bait
all
and
low sheen.
switch.
Gina.
Well, tell us what you'd like and we'll,
I
you
like
know,
the
we'll-
sheen personally.
Okay, you like the shiny, yep.
Shiny.
The shine might show more scratches.
Oh, I do, will be more visible to persons looking for it, so it's, I mean, they're pretty sturdy as is. I don't
Yeah.
think, the ones we have in front of the rec center are kind of shiny too, it's just, I like this better. Why settle?
Okay, blue ash, dusk, obsidian, those are all in the gray. Onyx is going to go towards black. Where are we, people? You need 3 votes here.
Go blue ash.
Got 1 call for blue ash. I'm not seeing
Blue ash.
another blue ash.
Blue ash it is.
We've got blue ash. There we go. Blue ash in the shiniest you can make it.
Great.
Is that
Thank you
enough
so
direction?
much.
Okay.
Easy enough.
Let's do our best.
All right.
All right, so we need a motion to approve the multi-jurisdictional electric bike sharing program with the blue ash color
So moved.
and the locations identified tonight. Got a motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fung. Any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Certainly, Mayor. Councilmember Pappen,
Yes.
Councilmember Cahalan,
Aye.
Councilmember Fung,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Goodman,
Aye.
Mayor Schneider.
Aye.
The City Council approves the multi-jurisdictional electric bike sharing program, corral locations, and bike racks in blue ash color and high sheen by a vote of 5-0.
Excellent. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank
And thank
you.
you. We look forward to seeing this roll out. Do we know when we think the bike corrals might start showing up?
We have not confirmed a date yet.
Okay. But we'll
we're
make sure that
working on
Justine,
a
our
lot-
PIO, has it, and we'll get the word out a little ahead of time and make it a thing.
Yep, we wanted to get the corrals and the bike racks approved first, and our PIO is working on a launch campaign communications. And so that would go out about 2 to 3 weeks before we launch.
And you know, something we've never done but other cities do is they have a community bike ride. You know, just kind of a little bit of fun. The weather's been so miserable for so long, but why don't you ask BPAC, MILLBRAE BPAC, to consider a community bike ride, including tricycles, scooters. But if we can do that, we can kind of celebrate when these are there and we can ride to all of them. And that would be another way of kind of kicking it off.
I'll reach out to the BPAC.
Excellent. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along, I know that I'm keeping us at a fairly slow pace. It's probably having been a day without power. Moving on to new business. This is item number 7. We're resolution authorizing the city manager or designee to sign professional service agreements with 21 firms for on-call consultant services for an aggregate amount not to exceed $6 million for a base of 3 years, with an option to exercise 2 one-year options to extend the agreements with an aggregate amount not to exceed the amount of $2 million per option year. And this is an action item. Mr. Batista, take it away.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council members. Sam Bautista, your deputy Director of Public Works and Engineering. So tonight I have the pleasure of introducing this item to you regarding these on-call professional services. Just to give you some background information regarding these on-call consultant services, the city has been utilizing these on-call services since 2016 for technical services and expertise. It supplements the city's, the city's limited staff, as well as provides capacity. So during this time, city staff, or based on the purchasing policy, city staff issued a request for qualifications to firms experienced in architecture and construction management, landscape architecture, structural engineering, surveying, and water resource engineering. 25 firms responded to that RFQ, and the staff, we reviewed the RFQs, and this slide just shows you the list of the recommended on-call consultants that we chose to go forward to help assist the city and the staff with any of future work. So as you can see, we do have consultants on this list that we've worked with before. So you've seen their names, and we were comfortable with using these consultants because of their familiarity with the city and with staff. So just a brief background on our capital improvement program. Based on the adopted operations and capital budget, there's approximately $60 million worth of capital improvement projects to be completed within the next 3 years. The total design cost for those projects is approximately $6 million. So award of these contracts does not obligate the city to purchase any specific level of effort from any firm, but these on-call agreements are there to, as I said, to assist the city with any help that we need. So our recommendation is to adopt the resolution authorizing the city manager to sign professional service agreements for on-call services with the 21 firms in an aggregate amount not to exceed in the amount of $6 million for a base term of 3 years, with an option to extend the service agreement for 2 one-year extensions for the agreement for an aggregate amount not to exceed $2 million per option year. And that concludes my short presentation. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Comments from council? I'll open it up for public comment. I have no slips.
Mayor, I do not see anyone in the public with their hands raised either.
I'm going to guess that we have a lot of people with no power tonight. Thank you. Closing public comment. Bringing it back to council. I did hear that a council member had a couple of questions that I thought were really worthwhile, not to stop moving forward with this tonight, but for the city to look at ensuring that we have women business, WBEs, minority business enterprises. Is that the E? Is an enterprise? And I don't know what the right word is for disability business enterprises, and then veterans business enterprises. And apparently we do not have an ordinance in the city of MILLBRAE, so that is something we should put on our work plan and make sure that we do all the work that's entailed in bringing on support for businesses that who need to step up on that. I would also add too that this will be my 3rd sister city trip coming up in my time on council. And it's always nice if we can have American-made when we go to another country. And I know that's trickier in this day and age where we let so much manufacturing leave the US, but especially for those very important gift giving, if we can look at that. So with that, if there's no other comments, motion in a second? Oh, go ahead,
Just,
Vice Mayor.
I think it's a leg up. I think that it's more of opportunity. And I think
Okay.
making sure that we're aligning our actions with our words. As the council or city, as we start to move towards equity and making sure that's what we're projecting to our community, that we demand it in all we do. And so it's not necessarily saying, hey, we're going to give a leg up, but it could be a best effort to make sure that we are projecting and making sure that we're publicizing properly to these groups to make sure that they know that they are welcome here in Millbrae to do the work. So I think it's really important for us to be able to do that, practice.
Absolutely. So I stole your thunder since I heard that the vice mayor had brought it up with the city manager. I think it's excellent.
you
And with
spoke with
everything
Brett.
entailed that we do that support.
Yeah.
And everything, I agree with everything he just said. So with that, so what direction, whether we bring that up at goal setting
Yeah.
on that. So, all right,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
And then with that said, I'd love to make a motion.
Motion by the vice mayor. Do we have a second? Second by Councilwoman Pappen. Any further discussion? Please call the vote.
Absolutely, Mayor. Councilmember Pappen,
Yes.
Councilmember Cahalan,
Aye.
Councilmember Fung,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Goodman,
Aye.
Mayor Schneider.
Aye.
The City Council approves agenda item number 7 by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you. And can't wait to see the landscaping designs in lieu of fake grass. Because the moratorium clock is clicking. We have until December to get that done. So leftover business from last year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, finally, and best, accept the fiscal year 2022-2023 mid-year budget report and adopt a resolution amending the 2022-2023 adopted budget. This is an action item, and welcome Finance Director Mike Sung.
Oh. Oh. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council members. If you'll just give us a quick moment, we're having some technical difficulties. Oh, there we go. Next slide, please. So today I'd like to talk to you about our mid-year report for fiscal year 22-23. And I'll go over the general fund, some other funds, talk a little bit about our revenues and expenditures, where they're trending towards, and what the projections look like and our recommendations. So first, I'd like to talk about the general fund revenues, and revenues are trending slightly higher than we've anticipated. That is due to a combination of a couple of things, one-time revenues. I'll go over some of those items in the next slide when we look at the actual revenues in their respective categories, as well as ongoing revenue changes as well. The other item that I'll talk about are the expenditure adjustments. There's two categories. One is for the increases due to development activities, and those are actually related to our revenues as well. As we're collecting more revenues for development activities, we're also incurring more expenditures for that as well. Also, this includes an offset for an anticipated increase for our general liability as well. So we're requesting a transfer out from the general fund to the general liability fund. Next slide, please. So as you can see, what we're recommending is an increase of $3.89 million in revenues from about approximately 34.63 to 38.52. Some of the larger items that I'd like to point out are property tax. One of the larger pieces for the property tax is actually the vehicle license in lieu. Usually what ends up happening is the state tends to pay that out approximately 14 months afterwards if it's included in their budget. And Usually that's between 4 to 800,000. It was an unusual year this year. It was approximately 1.3 million. And this has everything to do with how the state calculates this out, how many basic aid or non-basic aid schools there are. So that's why it's unusually higher. The next item I'd like to address is the transient occupancy tax, or otherwise known as TOT. We're recommending an adjustment of approximately $1.4 million. This has to do with a combination of a couple of items. It is trending slightly higher than anticipated, as well as Measure N had passed in November of 2022. And that was effective January 1st, 2023, raising the TOT in MILLBRAE from 12 to 14%. Also factored in is the brand new opening of the Residence Inn as well. So that's now been factored in. The other items that I'd like to talk about are licenses and permits and charges for services. You'll see we're making recommendations to increase that. And that, as I had mentioned before, is really due to additional development activity. Next slide, please. So only two real items to look at for expenditure adjustments. One is for building and plan check services. We're recommending increasing that by approximately $830,000, and also transfer out to the general liability fund. The building and plan check services are directly related to the additional revenues we're anticipating in receiving throughout the end of the fiscal year, and the general liability fund is we're recommending a $500,000 transfer. If we can move to the next slide, please. So other fund adjustments, there are a few. First, we just mentioned about the adjustment from the general fund to the general fund liability fund. The other is transferring out $500,000 in the MSASP park impact fees to the recreation construction fund project, consistent with our adopted funding plan. And the last is to authorize and appropriate $246,000 in our fiscal year 22-23 vehicle replacement fund. The funding is already there. We're just asking to spend the money for this year. We're looking at 3 vehicles that Public Works has recommended. They're more pressing and immediate needs for this year. With that said, next slide, please. I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sung, and I really appreciated the staff report. It's brief, it's really clear. Thank you. Council comments? I have one question. We're going down in franchise fees, and now that I'm a little more active with League of California Cities, they've been worried about that change in that law with franchise fees, which largely impact the solid waste field. Are we preparing for that? Why did that fee go down? Was it because we're getting ready for a bigger hit with franchise fees? I may not understand completely what's happening with them. I don't think it covers AB 939 cost recovery fees. I think it's the franchise fee component that goes into the general fund.
If we can go back a couple of slides to the general fund revenue, it's not a very large number.
No, it's small.
What we're looking at is about $60,000, and this is based off of the best information that we have in projections. As far as garbage is concerned, it's actually had gone up because of the contract that they had with South Bay Scavengers. That was approximately, that was factored in, and so we're looking at a very close estimate. It's not a very large difference, but it's more of a flat growth, I would say, than any real growth that we're looking at compared to some of the others, such as property tax or our recovery in sales tax, for example.
Okay. Just curious because I keep hearing about it when I'm on these calls, but I haven't really paid a great deal of
We're reviewing that, and we're aware.
You'll let us know what happens with
Yes,
that.
if something does happen, we'll let you know.
Okay, because that's one tiny risk, but a risk. My other dumb question is we have so many delivery trucks, and my guess is they're under the Commerce Act, so they don't have to pay any fees for operating on our streets. I actually had an Amazon truck do a 3-point turn right in front of my house while I'm working, right in my sweeping up branches on there. Is there anything we can do to control or make revenue off of Amazon and all the other delivery companies? Or is that simply the way it is? They get to run on our roads, hit our trees, and go driving off. And they drive off pretty fast.
Well, I would say this, if they're hitting our trees and banging, they have liability. So we can report them and report to insurance and collect insurance for any replacement. But in terms of franchise fees, it started to erode, several decades ago that, companies will go to the state of California again and have a statewide franchise fee that they pay the state of California, not to each local municipality. So it's a revenue source that we really won't be able to rely on,
Okay.
in the future. So we have to look at different ways, perhaps looking at our business license, looking at the way that's structured, getting creative in terms of wear and tear and use, encroachment permits, other areas that we can take a look at.
Well, along that line, I did have one person and then realized two more. They now have their animals cared for by mobile care facilities. And they want to make sure they're doing the right thing as good residents, and their service provider wants to do the right thing. So I think I wrote to you and I haven't heard back, but we may have maybe that's all under business license.
It's under business, it's under business license.
Okay, so I know many cities have gone and looked at business licenses, and I know Mountain View went way overboard and it kicked up huge problems. So I'm not advocating going that way, but maybe eventually we start looking at our home-based business licenses or our mobile businesses. Maybe there's something we can do in there. In the Lower Highland neighborhood with the trees, a lot of the trees do get banged by these big trucks, and the Amazon trucks are really tall. They're taller than the UPS trucks. So they're hitting the trees at least what I've seen. So thank you for that. No other comments? Opening it up for public comment.
Mayor, I do not see any hand raised in the
Okay,
audience.
and I have no paper slips. Closing public comment. This is what happens when you write a good report. Can we have a motion in a second to approve? This is an action.
So move.
Second?
Thank you. So we have a motion by Councilman Fund, second by Councilwoman Cahalan. Further discussion? Seeing none, call the question.
Absolutely. Councilmember Pappen?
Yes.
Councilmember Cahalan?
Aye.
Councilmember Fung?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Goodman?
Aye.
Mayor Schneider?
Aye.
The City Council accepts the fiscal year 2022-2023 mid-year budget report and adopts a resolution to amend the 2022-2023 adopted budget by a vote of 5-0.
And how nice it is to see that we're actually adding to our budget. Thank you. Thank you, City Manager and staff, for having us in the right direction. Last agenda item, number 9, authorize the mayor to sign a letter of support to state officials to request their assistance in placing the property tax in lieu of vehicle license fee shortfall backfill into the governor's May revised budget. And this is also an action item. Please go ahead.
Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council members, we don't actually have a report on there, but just a little additional background. We've been coordinating with the other cities in San Mateo County and the county itself. And the reason behind this is that in the governor's January budget, they didn't include the 21-22 VLF apportionment. It's about $32 million for the entire county. MILLBRAE shares about $440,000. So if they didn't include it, it's a little bit less that we would receive for the fiscal year 23-24 when we're creating our budget for that. The state's generally paid this amount approximately 14 months after. So that's why you're always seeing this come in slightly later. But this is a coordinated effort among all of the other jurisdictions inside San Mateo County. We're basically requesting our elected officials at the state to help encourage them to include this back in the May revise.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions? I read the letter. You make me sound really smart, so I appreciate that. If there are no, opening for public comment?
Mayor, I do not see any hands in the audience.
And I have nothing in writing. So with that, closing public comment, bringing it back, this is an action item. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Cahalan. And understand that in this motion, it also allows staff to do any follow-up letters on that. So as long as we're all on the right page there. Okay, I'm seeing nothing from there. Eduardo, if you could call the vote.
Certainly. Councilmember Pappen? Yes. Councilmember Cahalan?
Aye.
Councilmember Fung?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Goodman?
Aye.
Mayor Schneider?
Aye.
The City Council authorizes the mayor to sign a letter of support to state officials to request their assistance in placing the property tax in lieu of vehicle license fee shortfall backfill into the governor's May revised budget by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you. And any closing in memory of, but council comments. Last time I started with the councilman. How about Councilwoman Cahalan? I'm going to go this way. Then Fung, then Vice Mayor, then Pappen. Okay, no comments? Not even about Sunday? Then I have to do it.
All right.
Go ahead, Councilwoman. Sorry.
Just a few items for the Park and Rec Commission. We didn't have a meeting in February, but our March meeting is next Tuesday. The East Side Specific Plan Subcommittee, Mayor Schneider and I met with San Bruno Councilmember Marty Medina, who represents the east side of San Bruno. So we met on the corners where our cities and districts meet and kind of walked the neighborhood and spoke about some of our shared east side issues. Had a nice meeting with the board of the MILLBRAE Cultural Committee, learning more about their events and their goals. As was mentioned earlier, we had the Bayside Manor Park community meeting, and I attended that. We had really great participation despite the weather. I had a community volunteer who joined me in canvassing, just really trying to get the word out in the neighborhood. And a lot of folks are really looking forward to the next steps. So just being sure that we're really clear with the community on when it's time for them to come see those first drafts of the designs and how they can give their input. And now preparing for the Marina Vista Park event, which again is March 25th from 10 to 1. And I think I have some neighborhood volunteers, and as soon as the weather clears up, we're gonna start knocking on doors to help get the word out, ensure that we have a great turnout at that event as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And thank you to the consultants who stood out there, and Andrea, and a couple of other staff members in the rain on Saturday. Councilman Fung.
I'm going to be brief today. Peninsula Clean Energy had an executive board meeting earlier this week, and we talked about the plan for 2035 decarbonization feasibility and plan. But more to come on that. And also talk more about the plan upcoming year, dedicating more of our resources to help small residential, single family, small multi-residential family units, small commercials and offices to be more part of the solution for the decarbonization, helping them with more incentives to upgrade their wiring, heat pump water heaters, and continuing those programs so that we could continue to promote the use of these electrical appliances instead of reliance on the petroleum and natural gas. We're working hard to ensure that we can continue to offer low rates to our ratepayers, so hopefully 5% below the PG&E rate coming year, even though the cost of energy has gone up. Those are some of the things that we talked about in the next meeting.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, so I met with the Cultural Arts Advisory Committee, and we continue to work on our work plan for the year, as well as the art show, and look forward to bringing all that before the City Council in the coming months, as well as allowing the City Council to revisit the possibility of the committee becoming a commission. Additionally, tomorrow is the President's Breakfast at Skyline College. I will be attending. This Thursday, we will be all at or hopefully most of us will be at the unveiling of the sculpture and art piece in honor of Harriet Tubman.
Thank you. And public, please come down. City manager said 12:30. My calendar says be there at 11:30. But if we can check on that. Councilwoman Pappen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, Senior Advisory Committee is meeting tomorrow. Today was the senior lunch, which was very nice. They had a speaker about various trips, some very exciting trips that they could possibly take. It's good to know. I think all the senior lunches now have a sponsor. Don't know quite who it is, I forgot, but that really helps, and they enjoyed the coffee. Big popular thing for our seniors. They love their coffee. The Lions Club lobster feed was just this weekend, which is a nice success there. Attended the Managed Lanes JPA, which is a new managed lane on 101 there. And they have a fabulous equity program going on, which is being looked at throughout the region. So they are giving actually discounts on transponders as well as clipper cards. So the fast track and the clipper cards, and they're still trying to really get that information out. I know they touch base with the community colleges. Some of the groups are community-based groups, and so they're really trying to get the outreach there. They haven't quite got the posters ready yet, so that we can post them in the libraries and around the schools and everywhere that people might qualify to get these, but it's really a program. So some of the managed lanes are open, if you've seen them. So if you have a transponder and you want to pay extra to go a little faster on your route, hopefully it'll be a lot of buses and moving people along more quickly here. I'm going to note here, the video is not matching our lips. So there's a delay, and whoever's watching this is going to be very frustrated throughout the whole meeting here. So I don't know how you fix that, but if you'll notice it's not quite synced there. CCAG, the City and County Association of Governments met. They reappointed the chair, Davina Hurt, and Ricardo Ortiz as the vice chair. San Mateo County Association Historical Society is doing their fundraising right now. They have some great events. And please look at the news, look at your emails. The banking incident was an incident. The feds have taken care of it. The deposits are insured, everything is insured, but if you went to First Republic Bank in MILLBRAE, people are getting misinformation. The bank is secure, they've sent out emails, they have access to $60 billion. Don't need panic. Please listen to the information you're getting directly from news sources, not social media. Really, we don't want a crisis here. The president has issued statements, the federal, the treasurer's office here, so let's not panic. As someone pointed out, this is almost like the toilet paper incident when COVID hit. Let's try to be reasonable here. I want to compliment the San Mateo County Sheriff's Department for arresting 3 individuals who broke into something like 48 cars over the last 2 weekends. They were arrested, thank goodness, and sadly, one was a minor of the age 13. I will compliment again our Sheriff Christina Corpus for really making the cameras, the license plate readers, a reality in MILLBRAE. She pushed it, she helped us get those, and this is what the result was. This helped in the arrest of these individuals. So do not come to MILLBRAE and think you're going to get away with these type of crimes. Those individuals, and according to the district attorney, will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And it was lovely to attend the NAACP gala. The city of MILLBRAE had a table. The MC was our own vice mayor here. It was a lovely event and also very exciting to see San Mateo College National Championship football team was there, among others. Our congressman was there, our assembly member. It was just a wonderful event overall, and big fan of, now I'm
Tuck and Patty.
Tuck and Patty. They were there, and who knew they're local? I saw them in Marin. It was just wonderful to see them again. So again, my compliments to our local NAACP. I think they raised a lot of money, gave some scholarships, and will continue to do so. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Again, I want to congratulate the Vice Mayor. He was Master of Ceremonies. He did a fabulous job. And I'm going to tease our city manager because it turns out he's a fanboy. So Lynn Swan, if anybody remembers a football player from Sarah, who was actually roommate with somebody on my swim team at SC, his parents were there and they're delightful. So Tom told me, but he spent a lot of time with the CSM football team as a former baseball player in his college days. So go Bulldogs. A couple of things that I won't be able to attend. The Peninsula Volunteers run the Meals on Wheels program, and once a year they invite elected officials to go down to Menlo Park. You get to see this great senior center that they have where they cook all the Meals on Wheels. And it is the 30th of March. So I have this letter. I'm getting home from Washington at 2 a.m. that morning, so I don't think I'll be there. But if anybody would like to go, and then I've done ride-alongs. It is life opening to go on a ride-along. And we can always use MILLBRAE residents who might be recently retired and want to deliver meals a couple times a week, Peninsula Volunteers. I also received, and this is for the public, on April 21st, the Department of Park and Recreation Office of Historic Preservation will be considering the creation of a new California historical landmark for the Ohlone Portola Heritage Trail at San Andreas Valley. And there's a report here, and it was sent to me as mayor. I don't know if it's gotten to staff. I sent out an email last night to a couple of the community groups and trying to reach out to Dr. Cordero of the Ramaytush Ohlone to make sure that if the city writes to do a support letter, that we have to get it done by April, 15 days in advance, so by April 10th, tax day, close to tax day then. I have been getting more letters from the public. Some of them are wanting road repairs like Hemlock. A particular block in Hemlock, the 500 block, would like a new road. So I'm going to pass that off with all their signatures here. I want to apologize to everyone that I hope was going to come to our first in-person ground-based noise meeting here at the Chet Cootie Room. With the trees that fell all over MILLBRAE today, we felt it best. Just before the Burlingame had tree falls, then we had a tree fall on MILLBRAE Avenue, and then a couple of trees fell out of Central Park. So we canceled ground-based noise. I'm bringing this up, City Manager. I hope that before I can get that meeting rescheduled, we might have an opportunity to meet with the people of MILLBRAE and explain. The purpose of today's meeting was to identify various locations around the city of MILLBRAE to put temporary noise monitors to try to figure out, to actually try to get hard data on that low frequency noise, the rumble that you hear. Now, I know a lot of you who called me because we've been on reverse flow, which means the airplanes are taking off on one-way 19 right over MILLBRAE, right over Mills Estate. You hear that rumble there, but you hear a bunch of other sounds. But we were going to talk today about where to locate these to try to get real data to compare to a modeling study that we did that the Airport Roundtable commissioned and came out just before COVID. And then with the reduction in flights at SFO, it's kind of been sitting there. But now flights are back to about 85% of passenger normal. But the planes are bigger and heavier. So fewer planes, but bigger, heavier, meaning more noise on us. And that's what we are hearing now in MILLBRAE for all of you who've been calling me saying it sounds so much louder. It is that much louder on that. But then we do have one piece of good news coming from the airport. Runway 1 left, which is the ones heading out from back of the planes at MILLBRAE and pointing out over the bay. It's going to be shut down for 2 months for repairs about March 25th to May 25th. So we'll hear a little bit of quieter, or a lot more planes will be taking off on 28, which is the one that goes up towards San Bruno. So I think I'm going to leave it with that. We will reschedule it. I have for years never asked the people of MILLBRAE to start doing the sheer volume of complaints that Palo Alto does. They will put 3,000 to 4,000 complaints every month for the noise that they hear on arrivals. And it's really when the wheels are coming down and the planes are actually gliding into runway 28 for arrivals, mainly because there wasn't any chance of making a change. What we're trying to do with the data is convince the Federal Aviation Administration that they need to change the data that they use to make the noise and include low-frequency noise. So this is actually our time. It is MILLBRAE's time, as well as Burlingame and Hillsborough, to be speaking up as FAA goes through its reauthorization process. And that's one of the things that I'm going to be doing in Washington. I have an extra day and a set of appointments with some of the Quiet Sky caucus members from outside our area. We've already got our people. We need the rest of the caucus to help us with the fairly unique situation that we have here in MILLBRAE, in that our mountains concentrate the noise. It can be louder at the top of the hill than it can be in Bayside Manor, which is counterintuitive, but that's the way it is. So again, sorry that we had to cancel that because of trees. I was really happy the city took prompt action today in closing roads, and we're all safe. But City Manager, I would like us to consider I keep forgetting my word. We have contracts in advance with the tree people to save some of the trunks, because I think the trees, the cypress tree that came down over Palm Avenue today, could make great split rail fencing for around the new pollinator garden. And it's a way of saving a little piece of our history. Contingency contracts. So we need a contingency contract with a mini mill who can do that. I was down in Big Basin over the summer, and they were taking a lot of the trees that survived but had to come down from the fire, the big CZU fire, and turning them into the split rails that are on all the trails at Big Basin. So it's kind of a little nice way of taking a loss and turning it into a benefit on that. And it's that contract that I've been talking about, usually linked in with a tree ordinance. So hopefully we will be getting to our tree ordinance. With that, I thank you. I thank staff. I'll let you go. Staff has been out there again in all weathers. They have kept us safe, knocking on wood. Thank you, staff, for everything. City Manager.
Yeah, Mayor, I just want to confirm this Harriet Tubman statue unveiling Thursday. So it does start at 10:30. So
Okay.
guests arrive 10:30 to 10:50. There's a musical celebration from 10:50 to 11 a.m. And then the ceremony is 11 a.m. to 11:30. And then the statue unveiling is at 11:30 to 11:45. And then there's a reception from 11:45 to 12:30. So 10:30 to 12:30 is the event. So some nice things during that
Thank you.
during that 2-hour period.
And to the public, there are 8 pieces of visible public art in there. This is exciting times for the city of MILLBRAE. I really hope you'll join us. Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Yeah, not all the art has been approved, and I really want to see that come back.
It's coming back next time.
Thank you, Madam
In
Mayor.
2 weeks.
Okay, it was just a suggestion that we are down to 1,250 houses still out of power from 4,000. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you all. Everyone get home safe. And, for the next couple of days, it's not going to be as windy, but trees can still fall, branches can still fall. City Manager, what do we want to do about the trail? Are we keeping it closed?
Yeah, Mayor, will remain closed.
And I'm very concerned the middle schoolers leave Taylor after school and tend to walk through Central Park. Let's make sure that we have them come down. Let's make sure we figure out which way is safe for them, because there's trees on Taylor. All right, thank you. And we are closing tonight's meeting at 9:38. Thank you, staff.